This is Mungo Darkmatter, and welcome to Dark Matters. Tonight on Dark Matters, we're going to discuss how to adjust Prim clothing and other Prim attachments for avatars. Before we get started, I'm running version 3.3.4, which as of the shooting of this video is the most recent version of the official Second Life client. But if you're using a different client, the process should be similar, and the theory and the practice should be the same. Last video we shot with Firestorm, which is a third-party version of the Second Life client, and it's very similar to this client as well. It has some extra features, but we're not using any of the extra features, and so the process should be pretty much the same. Alright, now the first thing to consider when adjusting a Prim attachment is if the Prim attachment actually has a script in it to do size and adjustment. Prim stands for primitive, and a primitive is a basic shape like a cylinder or a cube, which objects in Second Life are made up of, and we'll see that in a minute. Now I'm going to take my cursor and left click on my sunglasses here, or the sunglasses of my avatar, and these particular sunglasses you can actually change the texture and all sorts of things with this menu. So these are pretty advanced sunglasses. I can change the texture, I can change the fit, which is the sizing, I can change the positions, and there are a few other things on the menu here which we won't go into. Hair often has a sizing script on it. Now it might not have a positioning script, it may only have a sizing script. Some Prim attachments will only have either or a sizing or a positioning script. Some will have both. Some will have a bunch of extra things in the script. So check that first, because it's always better to try to adjust things with the script that they have first, particularly with very complex objects that might be made out of multiple Prims. So that's one thing to be aware of when you're adjusting. So I'm going to get out of that menu right there. What we're going to do is we are going to create a red belt out of a single Prim. And I'm going to use the belt for demonstration purposes in this video, but you can follow the steps that I do in this video and create your own belt if you want to practice adjusting a very simple Prim on your avatar, and that might help you understand more how the process works. It gets a little harder to do the more complex the Prim clothing is, or the Prim object that's going to be connected to your avatar. And there are all sorts of things that you can connect to your avatar. You can connect skirts, hats, sunglasses, swords, bows, various weapons, any sort of thing that you might be carrying on your person in real life, a backpack, shoes. So this applies to anything you may run into. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to right click on the screen here, and I'm going to go to build, and build is going to bring up a menu here. Now you see up here there are a bunch of different shapes. These are the Prim shapes, or the basic Prim shapes that you can use in Second Life to build things out of. The cube is green. That's the default. Whenever you first create a Prim, or when you bring up the build menu, cube is the default shape because many things are built out of cubes. But we're going to go over here and click this cylinder, because that's what we're going to use for the belt. And you see we've got like a little magic wand, or the cursor looks like a magic wand. I'm going to go right here and left click once, and we've got a cylinder. And you'll see the axes here with arrows. They're blue, red, and green. and we can actually use these to move the object around in the world. Now we're going to go back here and go to the Object tab on the Build menu. Up here is the position in this on the sim of this particular object. You can actually change these individual numbers, but you need to be careful about that, because see, you can also move the axes and the number will actually change up here in the position. The reason you gotta be careful is if, like, say you put 4,000 down here in the Z position or axis, this Prim would go up into the air 4,000 meters and you might not be able to find it. So you can lose your Prims accidentally if you put an odd number in the position box there. The next set of boxes down are the size, and that is the size of X and Y, which is back and across, and Z, which is up and down. Sometimes these axes will be a little off on the object you're working on, and the reason for that is you can rotate things using this rotation boxes down here, which are in degrees. And for example, you'll see as I increase that, the cylinder tilts, and put that back to 0. Now the reason you may need to rotate something slightly is because you want to change the angle. For example, a hat, if you were wearing a hat, you might want to tip to one side or another. You can also change the rotation by going up here and clicking on this button here that says rotate, and you'll see that you'll get these rotation things that you can click on, and they're circles you can click on, and you can turn the object. Let's see. Alright, so we can set that back to 0. Now, so we're going to be mainly concerned with the size on this for right now, and what we're going to do is they're all 0.5 meters or a half a meter, or all of the sizes here. I'm going to change the Z size to 0.1. Alright, and then I'm going to change the other two axes to 1 meter. And let me just zoom into this a little bit. Alright, so there's our belt. You can click back on this. These buttons up here change what you're doing to the object that you have selected. Right here we have it on the move, so we can like lower it, for example. I showed you rotation. And stretch, I'll show you in a minute. Stretch will allow you to enlarge or shrink the object. Alright, so we're going to put it back on move here. The next we're going to click on the texture tab. And right here is the default texture, which kind of looks like plywood basically. I'm going to click on the texture thing and make it blank. This is where you would put, like, if it was leather or some fabric and you had a texture, you could put that on whatever you were making. So I'm going to click OK on there, and then I'm going to click on the color box here, and I'm going to click on red. The reason we're using this red is because it will be easier for you to see when we're making the adjustments on things. So I'm going to click OK there. Now I'm going to go back to the Object tab, and there's a box on the Object tab right here called Hollow, and that will hollow out an object. And so if I click on this up button, you'll see that a hole starts to appear. This is the number here is the percentage of the size of the hole, and the largest you can go is 95, which is what we're going to go up to. So we have something that looks a little bit like a red belt. Well, it looks like a hoop right now, but we'll say it's a belt. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click back on the General tab, and right here you'll see by default any object you create or any prim you create is going to be named object, and it's always good to name the objects so you know what they are when they are in your inventory. A lot of people who build get into the lazy habit of putting things together, particularly parts of things, and they won't name things, and they'll have thousands of objects just named object in their inventory. So you don't want to get into that habit. I'm going to name this red belt. And I'm going to close that. And I'm going to right click on the red belt, and I'm going to go take. Now I'm going to go back over to inventory, and I'm going to right click on the inventory folder and go new folder, and I'm going to type the name red belt there too. Then I'm going to go up here to the search box and type red belt. Now you see there's an object, it looks like a little cube here, called red belt, and it's under objects. By default, when you create an object, it will go under the objects folder. So I'm going to click on this and drag it into the folder called red belt. Alright, now let me find my avatar here. Oops. Get a better pan around and get a good angle on the avatar. You can pan around by holding Alt and either using the arrow keys or the mouse with the left button clicked to pan around to look at something. Alright, so when you get a prim piece of clothing, the designer has already fitted it to an avatar and attached it to an avatar and detached it and put it in a box and sold it to you. Since this is a new prim, we have to right click on it and go attach to. Now typically you attach it to the part of the body that you want it to kind of track with. Not only you know, like if you want an armband, you may connect it to the right upper arm, for instance, and it will follow the axis of the arm. You could actually attach it elsewhere on your body and kind of center it over your arm, but depending on what part of the body it was, it wouldn't track well with the arm, so it would be moving on and off the arm somewhat. So you want to try to pick an area of the body where the actual object would be attached in real life. So we're going to, in this case, attach it to the pelvis. And so we've got this hoop around our waist. Now, if I detach this, then the next time all I have to do is wear it, and it's going to go on correctly. I'm going to detach it again. Now, let's say that I've purchased the red belt from either the web-based online marketplace or from an in-world store, and I've got a little folder and it has red belt in it, and I've been given modification rights to it. Now some prim clothing you may not be able to resize at all, but you'll be able to position it at least. But if you can modify the object, you want to click on it and you want to go copy, and you want to paste the copy in the folder, or another folder if you want. And then I'm going to rename this particular copy of the object to red belt copy, so we know that it's a copy. A lot of times what I do if I'm adjusting an object that I've bought or even made is I'll make a copy of it, and I'll actually put the date after the name when I rename the object, so I know what date I adjusted it. And then if I adjust it again later, I'll create a new copy and date it that date, so I know what's the most recent kind of edit I've had of the object. It's good to keep an original of the object always when you buy it, because if you mess up the original and you don't have a copy, then you have something that you might not be able to restore to normal. Alright, now we're going to right click on our copy and go where? And see, it's picked up the proper, it knows where to attach because it's an exact copy of what we made before. Now, we could adjust the position of this belt and the size of the belt right now. But the problem is that the avatar isn't going to be as still. You know, it can move around. It can be very hard to adjust the position of something with the avatar moving around, and it can change positions as you're clicking around as well. So I'm going to use what's called a pose stand. I'm going to search for stand. Sometimes it's called a posing stand. You may already have one, or probably already have one in your inventory if you bought any hair or Prim clothing, because what happens is a lot of clothes designers and hair designers and people who make avatar attachments give you a free pose stand. You can also get them in various places throughout the world for free. So I'm going to drag that down and put it on the ground right there. And I'm going to right click on the pose stand and then select pose. Now this particular pose stand, I float pretty high above the pose stand. Some of them you're standing right on the pose stand. And it kind of puts you in the same position you would be if you viewed appearance, except you can work without having to worry about the avatar moving around or anything. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to select this belt, and I'm going to click edit, and I'm going to raise it up somewhat. Now let's see here. Let me get a little better angle here. Alright. Let me close inventory right there. Alright, so I'm going to go back and edit this. I'm going to go to Object. Now, we can click on Stretch, and you'll see there are a bunch of white little cubes, which are like handles, we would call them, that you can click on, and you can shrink the entire size of the belt doing that. And then if we click from Stretch back to Move, we can center it a little more. When you reduce the size using one of the handles, it will move kind of the center of where the object is, so it doesn't keep it centered where you have it. So if we go back to Stretch, you'll also see there are these little cubes that are green, blue, and red, and those will stretch them towards one axis or another axis. So if we for example, let me just pan around here. First of all, I'm going to move this to center it front to back a little better again. I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to Object and I'm going to go to Stretch, and I'm going to grab a red square here, and it actually flattens the belt in one dimension, so the belt is not circular any longer, it's elliptical or oval. Then I'm going to go back to Move and center it back on the avatar. Yeah, you can see it's kind of oval now. And I'm going to edit again. Now this time I'm going to move the y-axis, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change it to 0.5, so I can actually use, oops, I can actually use these numbers here to adjust it as well. Stretch works better when you have multiple prims attached together. Sometimes when you use just the sizing, it might not size quite correctly if it's really a complex object. So generally you would use the stretch unless it's a very simple object. So let's go back up to Stretch. We're going to grab the oops, that's not the green. We're going to grab the green. The nice thing though about if you can use the actual numbers, is the nice thing about it is those actually keep it on center. So we're going to go Stretch again. And we're going to stretch that back, and then we're going to click on Move and move forward and raise it up a little bit. Now let's circle around. So we're going to edit this one more time and move that, just center it a little bit better. That's probably a pretty good fit for our purposes. What you want to make sure is that it looks okay. You don't want to reduce the size of something so much that your body is kind of hanging out through it. To show you an example, if I go to Stretch, see how it's sticking in the body on one side there. Even if I centered it, it would not be correct because it would be too small. So you want to size it so that it looks good, but it doesn't cut into the avatar, or not too much, or noticeably at least. So some things you'll have to mess around with, because particularly the more complex attachments might be a little hard to get adjusted right. But for our purposes, this looks pretty good. Now I'm going to get off the pose stand. And I'm going to walk around a little bit. It's important to walk around with the attachment to see, with your walk and everything, how it shifts. A lot of attachments, particularly if they're very complex, aren't going to always be perfect in every position you're in. So you may want to even sit. Let's see here. Sit. That's not it. sit. Now that's lay down. It's not sit. All right. Where's my sit position? There we go. So you could try sitting in various positions and see if how the Prim object looks. Take the sit off there. And back in. All right, so that is how you adjust and size a Prim object in Second Life or Prim attachment for your avatar. So those are basically the ways that you can resize things. Remember always to make a copy of them in case you mess them up. And you can make a belt like this by following the steps I did if you want to kind of practice to get used to the controls and everything. And make sure you get yourself a pose stand. I'm Mungo Darkmatter, and this has been Dark Manners. And whatever you do, enjoy playing Second Life.